Hey there.
Oh no, not you again.
I bet you didn't notice this.
I bet I didn't. What do you want?
Have you ever considered what building I'm on?
Oh, are you kidding me?
Ladies, gentlemen, and trainers of all ages, as we get further away from the announcement of the Pokemon Scarlet and Violet DLC and closer to its eventual inevitable release, more information is of course slipping through the cracks and into our waiting hands. More things of interest, more confirmations, and even just more interesting theories that can really change the way we think about the DLC to come. We've talked about a lot recently in regards to the things that we do know, how the DLC is in 2 parts, and each part seems to be based loosely on different Japanese folktales, but how does this all loop into the game itself? Because it'll never be a one-to-one copy of something that already exists. Well, for that, let's dive into some more topics of conversation in the Pokemon community, many of which come from, well, let's say, reputable information revealers. First up then, let's talk about this tweet from Pearl Enthusiast who brings up a really interesting concept. Terapagos, the Pokemon teased as the big boy of part 2 of the DLC, the Indigo disc, and one that many believe to be the 3rd legendary of this generation. Partially due to its visuals, partially due to it being at the back end of the DLC schedule, and of course majorly because it is absolutely covered in terastallization-based visuals, the various Tera type symbols, the crystal in the middle, all of that, and quite often in recent past, the 3rd legendary is heavily responsible for whatever the big weird thing is that is happening in that generation, which in this case would of course be terastallization. The theory from Pearl here, though, is what if Terapagos has an ability that makes it automatically change its type to be super effective against the Pokemon that is out against it? I think that's a really neat concept. Of course, this could be ridiculously strong, but they just have to balance it around it having this ability. I quite like the idea though. On the note of Terapagos, here's an interesting thought from Light88, noting that the official Pokemon wording about the DLCs says that we will encounter Ogerpon, which is a specific term in Pokemon of course, implying that there will be battling involved as you may expect, but then they also say that Terapagos will appear. Just appear. That's the word they use, not encounter, not attack, not threaten to destroy the world, just appear. And this could mean something entirely different for this Pokemon. The theory going on here is what if the Terapagos that we have seen as of this point is essentially a baby version of the actual 3rd legendary? What if this is just simply a prevolution of its final form and we actually befriend the baby and nurture it until it becomes the real proper 3rd legendary we're all expecting? Whether this happens or not, I think it's quite a cool idea, and the specific wording that we've been given seems to indicate that there will at least be something different about the way that we interact with Terapagos. Moving on from that, we have this tweet from Riddler Koo about Scarlet and Violet Regulation C. This is essentially the 3rd season of ranked battling in Scarlet and Violet, and it notes something interesting. We are fully aware that Pokemon Home is intended to be connected to Scarlet and Violet in the near future, giving us access to loads of Pokemon not currently found in Paldea, and we also know that this should in theory be happening before the DLC is released. But an interesting point that Riddler Koo mentions here, and keep in mind this is an extremely reputable knower of Pokemon things before they actually happen, Koo points out that the specific dates that this season is for. Regulation C is from April 1st to June 30th, and the implication here is that we may well be getting Pokemon Home specifically between these dates due to the terminology used in this post. In the event post it says the exact words here down at the bottom: only Pokemon obtained in Pokemon Scarlet or Pokemon Violet games are eligible. Of course this would be literally a pointless thing to include under normal circumstances, so obviously you can only use the Pokemon that are in the games. The only exception though is if Pokemon Home gains functionality with Scarlet and Violet at some point between April 1st and July 1st during this specific regulation ranked period, and that's why they would make a note of this. Now to expand upon a couple of things from last week, first up, I showed off that this poster exists already in Scarlet and Violet and has been there the entire time. Essentially a full-on teaser for the first part of the DLC, the Teal mask, that nobody had deciphered until we'd already seen the announcement trailer that has the poster in it as well, which in itself is crazy, but I forgot to mention a specific part of this too. The location that this poster is on is the big restaurant Gym Battleground in Medali, which also happens to specifically be the place where you can change the Tera type of your Pokemon. Sure, this could be a coincidence, but it seems a bit too on the nose that the teaser for the DLC is on a building that relates heavily to Tera type changing, especially when we are pretty sure that Tera types will take on even more importance over the course of the DLC. What I'm talking about here is specifically this 4chan leak. This was basically confirmed as it's from someone who told us a ton of stuff about the DLC before the announcement actually happened and was then proven correct. But one of the things that they say is that in the DLC there will be Pokemon that have special Tera forms, not just new hats, as currently they They all just sort of have hats on their heads. But the implication is that certain Pokemon, when used with a specific Tera form, will actually take on a new visual appearance, perhaps giving them a much more significant change than just the hat, actually changing their colors or their shape somewhat. And if this actually has some sort of a statistical implication too, this could actually be massive and totally shift a bit of the competitive Pokemon meta as well, which of course would be quite neat. This part of the DLC was essentially confirmed by Riddler Koo, who referenced this leak. But in response to that, someone said, "I hope it's a decent amount of new Tera forms. I'm also hoping the Paldea friends are in the DLC." To which Koo simply said, "Decent," focusing on the term used to describe the number of Tera forms, and I believe this is to say that, yeah, there will be a decent number of Pokemon with these special Tera forms. It won't be all of them by any means, it probably won't be the majority of them even, but there will be a good little collection of them. On which note, we also have this tweet from Pearl Enthusiast zooming in real hard on a piece of promo material for part 2 of the DLC, the Indigo Disc, which has 3 type symbols in focus: Fire, Fairy, and Fighting. Pearl's question here is, what if the Paldean starter Pokemon have this concept of the special Tera forms? Because if any Pokemon will have these special Tera forms, it's likely that these starters will be involved. And then what if these are the types required to activate them? There's a bit of simplicity in this too, at least potentially. Obviously, Skeledirge is a fire Pokemon and Quaquaval is already part fighting type, but then there's Meowscarada, who is grass and dark, no fairy involved. So maybe this is what this implies and Meowscarada just needs a weird Tera type, or maybe I've got the types all mixed up. Maybe it's not as simple as it looks and it's weirdly Meowscarada fighting, Skeledirge, Fairy, Quaquaval, Fire. That would make for some more striking visual differences if it was the case, but it entirely depends what they're going for with these special forms. Interesting to note though nonetheless. Then we have this great catch from Light88, who brings up a specific line of dialogue in Area 0 and his translations in other languages. When you go down to the lower level of Area 0, in English it specifically calls it a lower level, not the lowest level. In other languages it simply says, "We are going down." This sort of implies quite an interesting concept, which is that there is an even lower potential area in Area 0 that we have not been to yet. And so far we've seen that the lower that you get in this place, the crazier things get down. Area 0 is pretty likely to be a part of the DLC still in some way, as we still have yet to finally solve the whole Paradox Pokemon thing for good. There are lots of things left undone with that, so a lower area actually makes a lot of sense here. Then from Blaze Incineroar, we have another specific screenshot from DLC reveal promo material with some conclusions to draw here too. There is a shot with various colors of dessert in a stall, like ice cream or snow cones or something: red for Scarlet, teal for the Teal mask, yellow, blue for the Indigo disc, and purple for Violet. So what is the yellow one then? All the rest of these have pretty specific connections to what we already have and what we know that we're getting, but this yellow one leaves a little bit of mystery. Is it implying the existence of a second DLC after this? Is it a hint at the next Pokemon game to come afterwards? Is it perhaps just a frickin' ice cream cone and we're getting a little bit too crazy here? I don't know, but I enjoy talking about these things, okay? Finally today, let's talk about the Pokemon that we have confirmed for DLC Part 1, the Teal Mask, specifically the non-stars, Okidogi, Monkey Dory, and Pheasantipity. We've talked in the past about how these may be multi-evolution Pokemon, these either being the final forms or the middle forms that we're seeing here, and these statues near the beginning of the trailer perhaps being earlier forms of these Pokemon. But here we have an interesting thought brought up by Soul Silver Art that not only lines up with my own theories, but would actually make perfect sense for these Pokemon each having 3 forms. Here's a quote from Ishihara on Pokemon Day. The part to focus on here is his hope that trainers who embark on this new journey find the same excitement and joy they experienced when they've encountered their first Pokemon. Every person's first Pokemon is a starter. That is just a fact, it's the way that the games are. And so what if these 3 Pokemon are essentially pseudo-starters for the DLC? You pick one of the 3 in their base form and then evolve it up. I think that'd be quite fun, and just for the sake of it, here is some fan art speculation of which each of these could look like in their little baby forms. Of course, this isn't any sort of confirmation of anything, it's just fan art, but I really like the way that this artist did it, and I could totally believe that these were real. And that just about does it for this week, everyone. A nice roundup of all things Pokemon DLC that we currently know, we think we know, and honestly, just some things that we want to. I hope you've enjoyed this, and of course, leave your own theories down in the comments below. Like if you like the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.